just to state what this is, the Historical Commission for the town of Watertown. It's a public hearing. It is Thursday, July 9th, 2020. We are having this via Zoom in accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general law, chapter 30A, section 20, if you feel like reading it, relating to the 2020 COVID-19 emergency, and to avoid group congregation, we're having only this meeting by remote opportunities. The first item on our agenda for this evening is a public hearing for 4044 Riverway to review the demolition application for a warehouse building at that address, built in 1960, and all the accessory structures. Dave Gorham is the applicant, and the applicant would like to.
What I just wanted to clarify that it's actually Green River Way. It says it in the body, but it doesn't say it at the top. So it's 40 and 44 Green River Way. Just wanted to clarify.
Oh, sorry, I didn't say the green. I see it. Okay,
Yeah.
Green River Way. You're right. And so what we'll do is hear from the applicant, and then questions from the commissioners, and then we'll open it to the public for questions, and then we will close the meeting and discuss amongst ourselves and have a vote. So if the applicant would like to proceed.
I don't know if you're muted. If Matthew, are you the applicant? You're still muted.
Mr. Gorham, we can't hear you because you're muted. So unfortunately, everything you said was brilliant, but we didn't hear any of it. If you could unmute.
This is Abe Buccelli. So I'm the representative of the owner there. All right, he just got out. I could reach out to him, but he figured it out.
No, thank you. You're good. Okay.
All right. What we have is we actually have a building at 44 Green River Way. It's part of a complex that has four buildings on it.
3 buildings.
I'm going to share the screen for the project.
Yep. And we're looking to demolish a building that was built in somewhere between 1946 and 1960. It's an L-shaped building that wraps around a concrete building, as you see here in the floor plan. What is highlighted in red is the structure that we're looking to demolish, and the color in gray is what we're looking to keep. What we're looking to do with if you can go back up one, can you up one?
Yeah,
what we're looking to do in the second plan that you see there is where we're demolishing the building, we're going to create parking. We're not rebuilding anything. These buildings are vacant. We're looking to find tenants for them. Parking is an issue, and we'll figure things out down the road once we have tenants. But the idea is to get rid of this building that basically has no value. And now we can scroll down to the next screen. This is on Green River Way, looking down Green River Way. The building here on your left is what's going to be demolished, and on your far right is a concrete building that's going to remain. This will give you a better idea of the wood frame structure as compared to the concrete block structure building that we're going to keep. Again, the wood frame building goes away. This is looking into the parking lot. There's another building in the back that's going to scheduled to remain. To your left is the former FD Sterrett lumberyard. That's already, I believe, been before you for demolition to convert to residential.
No.
Not yet?
No.
Nope, gonna be. This is from the end of Green River Way looking back up. You've got the concrete structure on your right. You've got a parking lot on the left. The Watertown Recycling Center is to your left, where you see that black pickup truck pulling into. And then in the far distance is the former FD Sterrett lumberyard.
I'm going to stop sharing the screen so that everyone can see each other better. So.
Questions?
If anybody, do you have anything further to add, or if anybody on your team has something to add before the commissioners ask any questions?
Andrea, do you have anything to add?
No, I think you said it all.
Okay. All right. So commissioners, I'm going to do this one by one just because We have some telephone attendees as well. So Susan, do you have any questions for this petitioner?
I'm wondering what is planned for the space in addition to parking.
Right now, we're going to pave it for parking. But
Mhm.
again, the building is vacant. Until we have a tenant for the building, we don't have a plan for the building. That will depend on when we get a tenant, and then we will, make appropriate plans from there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Marilyn, you have any questions?
Not really. It looks like what
Okay.
it seems to be.
Okay. I'm just going order on my screen. Joe Panto, any questions? Nah, he's muted, but I saw his head shake no, as in none.
No question, thanks.
Okay. David Russo, do you have any questions?
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
And Tom Malone, do you have
No questions. I printed out the
Okay.
material earlier, so I know what he's talking about.
Okay. All right. So if the commissioners have no questions, then we open it up to the public. Is there anyone on this Zoom call, whether by telephone or video, who has any questions for this applicant? No? Okay. Okay, Lisa Feltner gave us a thumbs up. Not sure what that means, but I think she approves.
I'm sorry, I don't know if you can hear me.
Oh, now I can.
I usually can see the screen where, oh, there you go. Sorry, I didn't raise my hand. I hit thumbs up instead.
That's okay.
I guess it's just a question to the commission. Would it make a difference knowing what they want to do with it? I assume your purview is just looking at whether the building is preferably reserved under the scope of their definition of the mission of the commission. So that's just my question is, how much does the use or intended future use affect your decision? I noted that there's an assumption that Starrett lumber is going to be coming forth for demolition for residential, but I believe that's on hold. So just curious.
Well, and David Russo may have something to add to this, but I'll just quickly state that we do look to what's going there to see what the impact on the historical resources may be. I didn't hear any questions from the commissioners. That may be because they don't feel that this is a preferably preserved place. Maybe they do, but as far as what's going to go up, I would think that if it were coming down, it might impact the same historical resources that something that might go up would impact. So we really don't, it doesn't weigh in our decision whether this is preferably preserved, although I do understand your question. David, do you want to add anything to that?
Yes.
David Russo?
Yes. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So, so oftentimes knowing the ordinance says specifically that the petitioner is to submit plans as to what is planned. Also, many times, if Elise is correct, that we often feel the need to know what the impact to historic resources are, and so sometimes if something is planned, it could be that what is planned is problematic in terms of the historic resources of what's in the immediate area. One of the other good things about a public hearing is that, it brings in people and they can often tell us and help us and instruct us as to what the historic resources of the area are. And so we can have a better feel for if this building goes up, if it's potentially something that impacts the historic resource. I think we would want to consider that. Sorry if that was a little circuitous, but that's my feeling.
I was circuitous as well. So, Lisa, does that help with your question? You can give me another thumbs up. Oh.
No, it does help. I imagine difficulty. It's kind of a potential catch-22 because it sounds like the parking lot's just kind of a hold until they figure out what they're doing. So in this particular case, but in general, in a way, anything could be demolished if it's not have much historical resource and you don't know what you're going to do, but you just want to get rid of something.
This is Andrea speaking, representing the owner. I mean, clearly, we are trying to lease the buildings as they are, and there is not enough parking. If all of those buildings lease, we do not have enough parking. So truly, a real, reason is to acquire parking. We're not just taking that space for now. We have to be able to park cars. There's just not enough if you've been over there, if we lease all those buildings up.
So I guess I know this is unusual on Zoom. I'm not raising my hand. Compare our staff. That's not my background noise. Just I don't know if the Historic Commission ever gets staff reports on traffic impacts, or I'm just thinking about, given that the TMA Pleasant Street target for shuttle, et cetera, what kind of conversations have gone on? I would imagine you're looking, how can we use our space? What would the impact be? Or is it just purely a historical commission matter?
I can.
So,
Oops.
oh, I was just going to say, let me just quickly, and then Gideon for sure, if you want to jump in. We really look at the historical resources of the town. We look at the historical value of the edifice or building that is being proposed to be demolished. When you come to traffic and things like that, I think that's a different department. But Gideon, is that what you were going to jump in and?
Yeah, I was gonna say that so there's 3 buildings. There's 4 buildings on the site. One of these buildings is wrapped around the other, so it appears as 3 buildings. And so any kind of a site plan would require a review process with DPW and our department for development. But it may be by right, it may not be, but that's not something that is the purview of this commission. This site plan has not been reviewed and approved by the Department of Public Works. The stormwater, there hasn't been any of those levels of review. This is a sketch proposal of what they would be doing, which is creating a parking situation so that they can reuse the whole, the rest of the buildings on the site. But that's not the purview of this commission, so that wouldn't be, they're definitely not looking at transportation or the Transportation Management Association, et cetera.
Okay, so
I appreciate that's what I guessed. I just am thinking, as Watertown's going through this transformation, it's difficult to kind of have these different silos, and I'm trying to get a better picture of the sequence of things, if you will, and how whether it's Conservation Commission or Historical Commission, you have your particular purview, but then understanding the context of how that fits in a evolving corridor or plans to come. So thanks for the reminder that, there will be a full site review. I just imagine if, are you saying then, I guess, that you get the approval to demo, it doesn't necessarily mean they can automatically do a parking lot, or that would be something?
I was saying that that's not the purview of this commission, but that has not been determined yet because they have not come to our department to figure out what their project or their parking lot's going to be exactly. But removing the building and allowing parking to be there to support the rest of the facilities would be most likely by right. But there's triggers and there's multiple ordinances that it will trigger. And so I don't know and it's not the purview of this commission, and it's not something to be getting into the details of here.
Okay, thank you for entertaining my questions. I know that even though they're outside the historical commission's concerns.
Thanks for asking, Lisa. Okay, are there any other questions from the community? All right, in which case, at this point, we're going to close the meeting, which just means you can see us and hear us, but you can't talk to us. So what I'm going to do, commissioners, is do what we've done in the past and go through a roll and ask if you have any comments on this project, and then we'll take a vote. So Susan, let's start with you. Do you have anything you want to say?
I don't have any comments, and I would not consider this preferably preserved. Is that what you were asking?
Anything you wanted to say? This is our discussion portion.
Okay.
Almost anything, Susan, almost anything. This is being broadcast on cable, so. Okay, thank you for your comments. Marilyn?
Pretty much what she said. It's pretty ordinary. Not a historic, architectural, historical, artistic structure, or at all.
Okay, thank you. Joe?
My thoughts mirror Susan and Marilyn. I do think it's interesting not to have that conversation here, but what Lisa had mentioned about us being in silos. I do agree with that comment. I think that maybe there's some room for improvement. But with regards to this project, I agree with Susan and Marilyn.
Thank you. And now we have David Russo.
I agree with the comments. As for a date for this building, I know in the agenda it says 1960. I don't think it was 1960. I think it was a little bit before that, maybe about 5 or 10 years or so. I was trying to triangulate it through looking at maps and stuff to figure it out. We don't seem to have a permit for it, but sometimes the addresses over there can be a little kludgy. So I'm not sure, but it's not anything that was built like in, say, 1850. It's an old 1850 warehouse. It's probably like a 1950 warehouse or something. But it seems very vernacular to me. It doesn't seem significant in terms of style or any association that I was aware of. So I have no comments.
And Tom?
Really, I agree with what other people have said. I don't think the building has sufficient architectural distinction, for instance, and I don't see it as deserving of historic preservation.
Okay, thank you. All right, if there's no other discussion, does anybody have a motion they want to put forth?
Well,
Anybody?
I will move that the building. I hope we get the right address. It's not. It's actually on
40
Green Riverway.
Green River.
Okay, that the property at 44, is it Greenway?
40-44, right? Is that the exact address?
It's not
Gideon?
preferably preserved.
40 and
Right,
44.
1 second, Tom. 40-44 Green Riverway.
Okay, it's 44 Riverway. Is not preferably preserved.
This is David.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, David second. And so Susan?
Let's see. Yes, I agree with the fact that it is not preferably preserved.
Marilyn?
Not preferably preserved.
Joe?
Not, yeah.
Joe, did you say not?
Yes, I said I agree. Not preferably preserved.
Oh, you're muted, Elise.
Trying to keep my background noise down. Okay, so, and I agree, not preferably preserved. Therefore, the motion passes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you to the petitioner, Mr. Gorham.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is 48 North Beacon Street to review the demolition application for a storage facility built in 1925. Quinn Stewart is the applicant.
So I'm going to unmute Steve.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I had to physically unmute you. Sorry about that. You had some background noise earlier.
That's okay. So are we good to go?
Yes, if you're presenting for the applicant, please proceed.
Yes, I'm the attorney for the applicant. So are we good to go?
Yes.
Yes.
Gideon, can you? Yes, okay. Just before we begin, is my team all on board here? Who else is present in the?
They're all there.
They're all there. Perfect. So
I don't know.
once again, good
Jay
evening, Madam
Jay is
Chair.
here.
Are we good?
We're good.
We're good.
Okay. All right. At the risk of repetition, good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Historical Commission. Attorney Steve Winnick for Escar LLC, but is now owned and controlled by Sierra Naturals Inc., which is my real client and is the real entity that the real entity that owns and will operate this site as a marijuana dispensary. So I understand that there was an interesting discussion in the prior case that dealt with the purview of the commission. Some of what I'll say in my opening may seem repetitious, but it's important, I think, for the context in which this case will go forward. So the matter before the commission tonight is an application for what I'll refer to as a waiver from the demolition delay ordinance. It's for 3 buildings that are, or structures located at a site at 48 North Beacon Street. The site is located in the limited business, the LB zone. It's bordered by North Beacon Street in the south, Arcel Street in the north, and it's approximately a quarter of a mile, I would say, east from Watertown Square. It was operated formerly as Anthony's Florist. Gideon, do you have one of the materials we submitted, I think, would show where it's located? It might be useful to take a look at that if it's easily accessible.
Right. Yeah, I wasn't sure if you wanted to wait for Quinn to do that, so I'll just I'll share.
We could take it up later if it's not easily accessible now. So we can see the site. It's in close proximity, but just outside of Watertown Square. It's at an interesting kind of intersection of North Beacon, where it kind of coincides with Arsenal and down further, of course, with Mount Auburn and Main Streets. It's currently under a purchase and sale agreement for us, meaning my clients, I'll call them SR or Sierra Naturals, to purchase. The agreement is subject, I have to say, to certain very strict and very tight due diligence time contingencies. I don't say that for the commission to feel, constrained in trying to deal with the essential core issues of whether these buildings should be preserved, but for our project to be viable, we really need to stay on a fast track, and a delay could be very deleterious to that. That's all I'm going to say about it. My clients intend to redevelop the site for an adult use and marijuana marijuana medical use dispensary. This will be one of 3 such dispensaries which are required, that is mandated by state as well as now Watertown local law, to be approved to operate in Watertown. Now, as was discussed
in the prior case, and I think it's important for the context of this one, is that the policy goal of the ordinance is to preserve and protect, quote, significant buildings in the town that are not located in an historic district. In an historic district, they would already be preserved and protected. So this deals with properties that are outside of historic districts. And it protects them where they are what I'll call merit worthy by delaying raising them. And the purpose of the delay is to provide a limited time to find ways in which the buildings might be saved from the wrecking ball. For example, by finding a buyer that might be willing to try to work in its redevelopment plan to preserve either some of the buildings or all of them, or at least significant historical or architectural aspects of them that are worthy of preservation. It's our position, which we believe will be supported by our project team presentations, that none of the structures on this site are in fact, quote, significant within the meaning of the ordinance, such that a delay in their coming down to complete our redevelopment project is either compelled by the ordinance. There are certain categories that on their face suggest that a property is deserving, unless proven otherwise, I would say, of preservation. And there are others that are not within those criteria, in which the board has to exercise its discretion, as it did in the prior case. Now, with me tonight are our project team members, including Lou Carger and David Rosenberg, who are the real principals of Sierra Natural. Mr. Carger has an extensive background in real estate development as a founder and managing director of Massachusetts-based, it's called Panther Residential Management. Panther's business is real estate development projects, including large-scale commercial, as well as residential and mixed use, meaning commercial, retail, commercial, residential, and mixed uses. Lou is a Needham resident, and he hails originally from Revere. Recently, he has formed equity and investment firms that provide the funding and also the management skills for many of these large-scale projects. Now, specific to the marijuana or cannabis industry, as it's called, he's been one of the pioneers in the Commonwealth, including founding Sierra Naturals, which is one of the state's very first medical use companies. That was first done in 2013. And it has been currently successfully operating dispensaries and also their associated, what I'll call, cultivation facilities in Needham, Somerville, Cambridge, and Milford. Now, notably, Sierra has never had an operational compliance infraction, we'll call it, or violation. And it is in fact used by the State Cannabis Control Commission as a training grounds for new inspectors because they demonstrate, Sierra's operations demonstrate what a gold standard operator should look like. Now, Mr. Rosenberg has extensive business management experience. He's run multiple successful commercial enterprises in New England and was recently awarded Boston Business Journal's 2019 Regional CEO Social Leadership Award. He is presently the president and CEO of Sierra, as well as serving on its board of directors. He'll speak tonight to Sierra's commitment to being a strong, what I'll describe as corporate citizen. Obviously they're not technically citizens of Watertown, but they are business members of the Watertown community. And as it has done in other cities and towns, it's going to set an example of what I'll call good corporate citizenship is about. Bear with me a moment.
If I could just ask a question, we're talking about 48 North Beacon Street. So do you have information about 48 North Beacon Street as it stands now that you can provide the commission?
Yes, I'm going to be, this is kind of what I'll call my opening. I have a team of experts, really, that are going to deal with the facts. And the case will turn on its facts and not from argument by me. At the end, of course, I'll base my legal arguments on the facts that they present. So I'm going to get right into that in a moment. Just bear with me. So with us also is Jay Humans. He's the regulatory counsel for CERA. Now, Jay was the former #2 man at the State Department of Public Health, where he was a primary architect of the state's medical use regulations, medical marijuana use regs, as well as a senior advisor to the state legislature in drafting the current adult use laws. Okay, so you will hear from our preservation planner expert. Her name is Quinn Stewart, about the site's history and its buildings and structures. Now, first of all, you'll learn from her presentation that all of the criteria under the ordinance that I would characterize as automatically suggesting that the buildings are potentially historically significant. For example, being listed on either the national or the state or our own local registries of historical structures, or this commission has its own inventory of them. None are present in this case. And with respect to the commission's discretionary powers over properties that don't fall within what I'll call those trigger wires for automatic suggestion that they should be protected, the only thing that characterizes these buildings as even potentially of what I'll call historic or architectural significance is their age, which is not that old. Like the case before us, you'll understand that these were built, pretty much after World War II, most of them. And they are not distinguishable as particularly good examples of the architecture of their time. And what they actually may demonstrate that might have been significant has been plastered over with modern changes and renovations, and they're in dilapidated conditions. Now, you'll also hear that from our project architects about the actual site plan. Well, first of all, you'll hear about the existing conditions of the site, which is what the chairwoman has just tried to focus me on. And they will also talk about what the proposed renovations are, to the extent that they're actually on paper, because this is in fact a work in progress. As Gideon has suggested, other boards and agencies, and as the chairwoman herself has pointed out, will be dealing with issues that deal with parking, with drainage, with DPW concerns, fire department concerns, police concerns. So we're at the beginning of this process of moving it through what I usually call the belly of the snake, of the bureaucratic steps that are necessary to get final approvals. Now, I'd like to reserve some time before we get to the presentations. At the end, before you move into your business session, where you'll actually take up and deliberate and vote on the application, for an opportunity to just sum up what I'll call our presenters have said to the commission. And then I'm going to, of course, submit on the facts in the ordinance that the project is entitled to a waiver from demolition delay for all the structures. So without further ado, Madam Chairwoman and members of the board, I'd like you to hear first very briefly from David Rosenberg, and then we'll move on directly to the experts, Quinn Stewart and Tom Scott from Scott Griffin Architects. So David, are you prepared?
Mr. Winnick, I just want to, as a point of procedure, and it really isn't reserving time. So once you've finished your presentation and we technically close the hearing for discussion, we won't be coming back to you unless there's some reason the commission didn't ask you a question that they need. So everything that you want to put forth, I suggest you do it before we close for our discussion.
Yes, exactly. But with all due respect, then consider my closing as prior to the business session, if you would.
Okay, all right.
So, David Rosenberg, you're up front and center. Be brief, please.
I will. Good evening, commissioners. Thank you very much. I just want to say that my friend, my best friend Luke Hager and I have a lot of business experience, and we're hands-on. And both of us in our businesses one of our core principles is giving back to the communities that have made us successful in the first place. We even have with us, who's on this Zoom meeting tonight, Juan Packnett, who is our Vice President of Community Investment. Ironically, I just got appointed to the board of Right Turn, which handles addiction recovery, mostly of alcohol and opiates, right down the street on Arsenal Street, and they've been the recipient of a lot of our support when I was president of Prime Motor Group at Prime Cares. We recognize that this is the beginning of a process where we work with Watertown, both public officials and its residents. And we just really want to say that we're here, we're hands-on, and we're really excited about this project.
Okay. Quinn Stewart.
Hi, good evening. So I wanted to confirm the construction dates a little better. There was some discrepancies with whether or not the building was built in the 20s, the building was built in the 40s. So what you're seeing on the first slide here is one Sanborn map back from the first clue. And you can see this is pretty much a lot of what the streetscape looks like now on either side of the property. There's still these double houses that are primarily residential. And so you'll see the Z shape is our existing lot. And there were 5 buildings on that, 4 double houses and 1 single family. You can go to the next slide. And so this was the first hit that I got, essentially, that the building was in construction. So I went back 1 level from there, and I did some deed research, and it turns out that the Gatchells, both Lester and Gladys, husband and wife, they purchased the 4 of the 5 lots in 1945. So I've dated this building between 1945, when they took possession of the 4 lots, and 1951, which is this map. I've also circled at the top 84 and 112 Arsenal. Those are 2 addresses that I found in connection with Gatchell Glass Company. So they were local, literally to the area before purchasing these lots and constructing the building. I know that sometimes we reference the building as 3 buildings, but I think that when you're able to really study this map and knowing the history of how Sanborn maps track additions to buildings, different construction periods and types, it does seem to me that it's 1 period of construction, and that this wonky shape is due to the lots that they own being staggered. So you can go to the next slide. So because there's a large gap in map coverage, I turned to some very fuzzy historic aerial photography, but I hope my arrows can help decipher this. So this is 1957, not long after that 51. You can see, you can at least, hopefully you can see, I can tell they're flat roofs where the 2 red arrows are, that's the Z-shaped building. It also shows that there's still the 2 multifamily houses and the 1 single family house on the 3 remaining lots. You go to the next one. The next photograph was my trigger to understand when what I'm calling the addition was constructed. That's the 2-story section that faces onto Arsenal Street. It also is when the last double house or the last two double houses were demolished. One was to create the parking lot that faces North Beacon, and the other for the two-story addition. But the single family house did remain adjacent for quite a while. The next slide would be great. So this is the gap in map coverage, like I was saying. So this is the 1971 insurance map as well. And you can see the glass company occupied the entire building at this point. They used part as a showroom and part as a warehouse. And this is pretty much as it exists today as far as the footprint. The single family house has already been removed. The parking lot had already been there. I was able to track the Gatchel glass at the location into the late 20th century. 1975, I believe, was the last city directory that they were listed in. And by 1984, the directory listed Anthony Forrest and the limousine company that are there now, or not there, but most recent occupants. And the Gatchels did sell the company, or did sell the property in 86. So I'm dating, you can go to the next slide while we talk. I'm dating the alterations to the building around that 1980s time period. We'll get to that in a minute. So these wonderful photographs from the 1978 MHC inventory form, while Gatchel still occupied, well, this was the confusing part. There is newspaper all over the windows. So I'm interpreting that as that they have vacated the property, or this is 1982. They vacated the property sometime between 75 and 1984 when the next occupants were in, Anthony Forrest. So this is a great picture because it still has a lot of the original materials and very quintessential, what we would say modernist style or mid-century modern for commercial architecture. It has those great bands of plate glass windows, porcelain enamel metal tiles, which I personally love, and the prominent cutout lettering, which is very important in the mid-century commercial style. You see it a lot on movie theaters and shopping centers from this time period. And then the cantilever awning was actually wrapped in additional enameled aluminum strips. So the mid-century modern at this point, their big emphasis not only on on very clean horizontal and vertical lines, but it was also playing with modern, newly introduced materials like the enamel tiles, like the aluminum, like the bands of glass and the cutout lettering. Stainless steel was really important to them as well. So if you go down to the next one, so that's the North Beacon elevation. This is the Arsenal elevation, which shows the addition and then the secondary elevation of the main block of the building. Again, the porcelain enamel tiles and the prominent cutout lettering and the cantilevered are mimicked on this elevation as well. But what I also liked about the addition was that they didn't skimp on the architectural detail of it. It wasn't just a warehouse space, it was a box. They did use the glass curtain wall and the spandrel glass tiles, which are still there, and hopefully we'll get a chance to see the proposed elevations. They're going to be they'll be replaced in kind, so they'll still have that same appearance. So if you can go down to the next. Like I said, I'm dating these alterations to about the 1984-86 period when the Gatchels obviously no longer occupied the building, and then they sold the property. Also, based on the deterioration of the materials, they seem to be about that age. I'm not a Watertown resident, so maybe somebody remembers it prior to these alterations that can help out with that. But as you'll see, the enamel tiles were removed and they applied this stucco finish. They have removed all the steel lettering and that are those cutout, which is the really important part. They literally pop out of the facade. And then the removal of the aluminum stripped awnings and another application of stucco. Other than the clean lines and the awning, the use of glass, yes, those are all kind of the bones of the modernist style, but I feel as though with the removal of those materials, the replacement of them in something that was not appropriate and not particularly used, especially in New England at the time of the mid-century modern movement, really has harmed its integrity, architecturally. So we can go down to the next slide. Again, you know, my conclusion is that although the bones of the building are still there, and when you do reference that historic photograph, you can see it still looks essentially the same. By removing the material that was the innovative part of the mid-century modern movement, it really has diminished the integrity, and it just has not retained enough characteristics of that movement to be an intact example of the mid-century style. Does anybody have any questions or want to repeat any of the slides?
So I think what we'll do is wait until your entire presentation is done.
Wonderful. That's even better.
I'll open it. Okay, so Mr. Winnick, who's next?
Tom Scott of Scott Griffin Architects.
Hi, that's me. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about the site plan, the floor plan, and the proposed elevations of the building. Can you bring up the site plan, Gideon?
Is that a different document than the one that Quinn's just submitted? Let me see if I can find it. I hadn't planned on opening another one, so I didn't realize.
Okay. I think it would be helpful to see the site plan that was part of the application.
Yeah, it was in the PDF of the application.
Yeah, I know. I just didn't have it planned for this. There's a lot of like planning ahead, and so I did not have that one on this easy access.
Well,
so.
I can talk about the elements.
Yeah, talk while I'm looking for it.
Yeah, sure. So along the Arsenal Street side of the building, we are proposing to maintain a pretty significant amount of the facade on the Arsenal Street side and the two left and right sides of the building facing the abutting residential tenants. The proposal is to take a portion of the building down that is on the North Beacon Street side, or the south side of the building. On the Arsenal Street side, there are two existing curb cuts there now. One serviced the floral delivery van that pulled in and out of the building. The other service, the limousine service that occupied the two-story portion of the building. We're actually blocking both of those up, and we're going to be infilling the windows and doors that were there for that purpose with new storefront and curtain wall. On the North Beacon Street side, there are two existing curb cuts. We're going to keep both of those, and we're going to have a parking. We're going to provide parking on that side of the building and link those two curb cuts together and have one-way movement through the parking lot, one-way circulation through the parking lot.
Gideon, I have the application. Would it help if I share?
No, I got it. I just had to put a thumb drive in.
Okay.
It just took a little while.
Okay. The other elements that will be provided on the North Beacon Street side, or this is it, perfect. We are going to provide handicap accessibility from the North Beacon Street side via the sidewalk that kind of meanders from the left of the site around the parking and into the entrance door, which is in the lower left-hand corner of the building. There's a ramp inside that portion of the building that transitions you up to the level of the Arsenal Street side, which is the actual level of the buildings that we're saving. So the other elements on this plan, we're going to have landscape buffers in the setback buffers on the left and right, and also along the North Beacon Street side. We have a little bit of a landscape buffer there as well. So we are going to introduce some landscape elements We are planting some small planters against the building on the south side of the building and also on the north side of the building. We're going to reactivate the main entry to the building, which today is closed up. And I'll show you that when we get to the elevations of the building. Perfect, thank you. So can you scroll down so we can see the plan? I just want to briefly talk about the plan. The plan is, it's in the first sheet. Slide the first, yeah, there we go. Slide that one down a little bit more. All right, keep going a little bit more.
Oh, you mean the site
Right
plan?
there. Yeah, that one, the floor plan. So in the floor plan, you can see we're going to activate the two-story portion of the building, which is on the right side, and it's labeled showroom. We're going to activate that as the showroom for the dispensary, where the customers will come in and view product and make purchases. We're also providing, it's 4,500 square feet of space, which is the requirement by the tenant. There's 4,000 square feet that we're saving on the first floor level. And we're adding a mezzanine in that two-story space for storage of the product. That mezzanine will be about 550 square feet. And then the other elements that are on this level, we have an entry vestibule that will be fully secured. There's a security office, staff room, manager's office, and waiting room. If you scroll down, okay, this is good right here. So this is the Arsenal Street view of the building. And you can see we're going to be restoring the two-story curtain wall, which was part of the original building. We have to replace it in kind because it's not energy efficient and there's a lot of problems with it right now. But we are going to remove and replace and restore it significantly as it exists today. So we'll have probably tinted glass and spandrel glass that's colored in several spandrel colors to kind of brighten up that facade. We're also planning to refurbish the cantilever canopy over the main entrance. You can see below the Sierra Naturals sign. We're going to restore that canopy, the main entrance. We're going to add a small covered planter right there to kind of spruce up this side of the building. Today, there's a display window in that location that's falling apart and it's in very bad condition. So we're going to remove a portion of that, put the planter there, put the main entrance, and restore that canopy. On the right-hand side, we have the what was a garage entry door that the floral company was using. We're going to insert storefront and curtain wall system in that, kind of keep the size of it and keep the kind of the imagery of that being a door, but we're going to infill it with glass and spandrel panels and upgrade the finishes. So the new finishes on the building, we're going to use a wood tone. It's called a composite cladding. It's a fibron panel. It'll be a rain screen that'll cover the area where the sign is indicated. The canopy elements will all be clad in new composite aluminum materials. And there's some exposed brick that we're going to paint a light color. On the right and left side of the building, there's a red brick that faces the adjacent residences, and we're planning to leave that as is. So the residences on the right and left side won't see any real change to what they see today. If you scroll down to the North Beacon Street side, there we go. So this shows the.
Yeah.
This
I lost my
shows the.
internet.
Thank you. This shows the removal of that, what is today Anthony's Floral portion of the building. And then we have to build a new wall along that edge of the building because we're tearing down a significant portion right there. So we're going to use similar materials that we're using on the other side, keep the same theme, the wooden materials. metal clad materials, some upgraded materials that are maintenance free and friendly. We're going to use a light colored brick, and we're going to have we're proposing to put a trellis element on the big wall of the building that's actually hidden by that tree. And you can start to see some of the landscape buffers that we'll be able to plant, and on the right and left edges, and of course along North Beacon Street as well. That's pretty much it. I think that kind of gets us through the architectural portion of it and the site. So if you're holding questions for the end, I'm not sure who's next, Steve.
So who's next is myself, if all the questions are going to be taken at the end. Madam Chair, what say you?
Yeah, we'll ask our, go ahead and finish your presentation, then we'll ask questions if we have any.
Okay. So cases turn on facts naturally, and the facts relevant to whether the buildings are entitled to preferably preserve building significance were covered in great detail first by Ms. Stewart and supported by the project architect in his presentation just now, Tom Scott. I'm not going to repeat all of that. I just want to touch on what I consider to be the core factual issues and what they have to say about the decision tonight. First of all, none of the criteria under the ordinance, which are kind of tripwires that would suggest the buildings are potentially historically significant. For example, being listed on any of the national or state or local registers of historic buildings, or this commission's own inventory are present here. More importantly, because I think the discretion of the commission is properly much broader than that, the buildings themselves in their present condition, if they ever were arguably significant in a historical or architectural sense, they certainly are no longer examples of any unique architectural or historical heritage or resources of the town, because they were basically mongrelized over time. And the important features that Ms. Stewart focused on that made them somewhat potentially a unique exemplar of their time and their era, which I would describe as modern, because frankly, I'm of the same era myself. And I'll digress just for a moment. Getchell actually made the glass tabletop of one of the principal conference rooms in my building at the time. And at the time, I also served as chairman of the planning board. But a lot of years have gone by, but I still consider myself of the same modern era of this town's history. I mean, the birth of our nation, in which critical meetings of the colonial patriots were held, took place, right here, leading up to the Declaration of Independence. So we have a very long and storied history in Watertown. And I don't think, based on the evidence, any of these buildings rise to that level. So given the building's lack of any unique historic or architectural character, or what I would call, and I think Ms. Stewart used the same term, remaining integrity of the buildings to any such unique character, and combined with their deteriorated conditions, which really make restoration of these buildings in connection with their reuse for modern purposes infeasible, I respectfully request that the commission find and determine that the buildings are not entitled to be preserved as significant buildings. And further, what flows from that is that the commission vote to waive the demolition delay provisions of the ordinance, allowing the building inspector to issue a building permit to raise any or all of them in connection with the site's redevelopment. And just as a last, comment, there was a very good discussion by Gideon and about the nature of the process moving forward. This is going to be subjected to additional scrutiny for what I'll call the zoning and land use issues, which are really not part of the purview of the commission. And I think that's been acknowledged by the commission members. And it was really clarified by Gideon's answers to some of the questions that were raised, which were good ones, by Lisa Feltner, who happens to be the counselor for this district. So in finale, I think this is a project like the one before this one that needs to be found that they need not be preserved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winnick and your team. I'm going to do a roll of the members of the commission to ask if you have any questions, and we'll ask the community if they have any questions. So Susan Steele, do you have any questions for this petitioner?
Not at the moment, no. Well, I guess no.
Okay. Marilyn, do you have any questions for this petitioner?
No, no, thank you.
Joe?
No.
David Russo?
Yes, I do. So in the legal advertisement, it says that it talks about the address, and then it says accessory buildings. And so what in the petitioner's view is accessory? Is it, I'm looking at a map. Hold on just a moment. I can be very specific with my question.
David, before you go too far, I just wanted to acknowledge that we had tried to create a generic template, but it kind of failed on this particular legal. So the intent was that we're noticing the buildings on the property in order to allow the commission to discuss them all. But the way that language was written was somewhat like what you would expect on a single family or two family with an accessory structure. So that's partially staff's fault, and just it's really a combined single structure on that site. But if there's a little, covered outbuilding or other things. So I just wanted to, before the applicant who didn't write the legal got involved with it, I just wanted to acknowledge that that was a staff level reference to the buildings on the site.
Okay.
Anything else, David?
Yes. So I want to confirm that what we're talking about is that Z-shaped building, and that none of the other houses that are adjacent to it at all. I know that that ownership is a little funny in this area, and perhaps the current owner maybe owns other ones in the area. I'm not sure, but I just don't want to be thinking that it's nothing other than that Z-shaped building. It's not one of the other multifamily or single-family houses in the area. It's this Z-shaped building that's orange.
Mr. Winnick?
Yeah, so my understanding is that there are three structures that we'll call them structures. There is the limousine structure, and there was an addition attached to it, which we're calling a structure. And that the third structure is the one I think that had, well, it's the one that was the florist shop, is the two-story brick building, which we're proposing to take down.
I pulled up the site plan, and it is the Z-shaped structure. There's from that footprint of it, there's one building on the site that has a frontage on both streets. Yeah. David, I know you don't have that in front of you, but so it's actually in effect, there's two parcels, but they only have the one commercial building that are attached in the middle, but they were built at different eras.
So no, none of the adjacent residential buildings are included. It's just that one D-shaped commercial building that fronts Arsenal and North Egan.
Thank you. I have no other questions.
Okay. Thank you. And then finally, Tom, do you have any questions for the applicant?
No, I'm sorry I couldn't see the visual presentation, but I don't really have any questions. I think I'm glad David asked that question about the other buildings, because there was some discussion about them, but I don't really have any questions right now.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll open it up to the community. Is there anybody on the Zoom meeting that would like to speak, not from Mr. Winnick's team or the commission, but on from the community?
Lisa's raising her hand.
Okay, Lisa, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Oh, no, I was just gonna say I really appreciated Quinn's research there on the history. It was really interesting, and showing the maps. Couldn't see the site plan that well, but that's not as applicable, I know, to the Historic Commission anyway. So thank you for that information.
Yes, I agree, Lisa. Quinn, thank you. Great information. Anybody else from the community have any questions for the applicant? Okay, so this is the portion of the meeting where it's the commissioner discusses this property, and hopefully there's a motion. But at this time, we ask Mr. Winnick and your team not to jump in, even though it might be tempting if there's any discussion. Okay, so I'm just going to go through the roll again, just because it's easiest on the Zoom. Susan, what do you think?
Well, I actually like the modifications and the renovations that are proposed for the old mid-century modern structure. And I think it will be an improvement to what currently exists.
Marilyn, do you have any comments on this property?
Well, we don't have many mid-century modern items in Watertown, and too bad that those details got lost over the years. But it's an example. But it's been, had hard usage. Pardon me? It's had some hard usage.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Marilyn. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I thought the pause was a...
I was trying to get my words together. Sorry. It's hard out.
Okay, shall I move on to Joe?
I don't know that I have anything constructive beyond what the others have said. I'm interested to hear if David has any additional info on it. I thought the presentation was great, but I know.
I'm sorry, you sounded for a bit there like you were underwater. Could you try that again?
Yeah, no problem. I don't have too much more additional comments other than what was already said, but I'm interested to see if David has any other info on the property beyond what was in the presentation.
Okay, thank you. So David, did you hear that comment by Joe? Do you have any comments, and do you have any more information on the property?
I don't. I haven't been able to get down to the town hall because of the closures and stuff. So I suspect there are building permits there, maybe under one of the other numbers, but I have not been able to get there. There is one other mid-century modern building up on, I think it's Hunt Street. It was the original Stanley Steamer building it was sort of mid-century modernized. So it's an odd building, but it's another one. Certainly a rare form in Watertown. It is on our inventory. Attorney Winnick indicated that it isn't on an inventory, and it is. The commission does maintain that inventory. It is on it. I'm certainly very happy that the petitioner did note very specifically that it was inventoried in 1982 and provided that information. I found that as well. I thought the picture was great. Make no mistake, I think what they're proposing is probably a good thing. I like the fact that portions of the building will be restored. So, but unfortunately, I don't have anything otherwise specific. I think what they are restoring is great. And maybe if you'd consider even signage that mimics some of the original signage. Clearly, when the glass company went away, no one expected, a new person to use that signage. But the same kind of signage could be interesting and a nice tip of the hat to what was there.
Yeah, may I add something?
Sure.
If not my turn, I know. But I wanted to say I really appreciated the history that was given and the very kind of careful outlining and documentation of the evolution of that site. It was really very well done and helped me see kind of where things are and where they were.
I agree. Steve, no offense, but your presentation was fabulous. Quinn was the star, though. Okay, Tom, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so do I hear a motion from anyone on the commission?
Well, I guess, hold on just a minute. This is the building at 48. 48, I move that the building at 48 North Beacon Street is not preferably preserved.
Does anybody second that motion?
I'll second it.
That was Tom, Susan. Okay, and so I'm going to go through the roll. So Marilyn, there's been
Yes.
a motion that it's not preferably preserved, and Tom seconded it. Are you in favor of the motion?
Yes.
Joe?
I'm in favor of the motion.
Joe said he's in favor of the motion. And David Russo?
Yes.
And I think I got everyone, right? Yes.
No. Oh, yeah. What about Matthew?
You seconded, did you not, Tom?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Did you
Just
skip
me on
anybody?
Matt. Matt's not here. It doesn't look like Tom.
No, yeah, Matt's not here, Tom. Sorry, you're on the phone.
Oh.
You can't.
Oh,
That's not-
I see. Okay.
Okay. And I vote in favor of the motion. Therefore, the motion passes. This property is not preferably preserved. And I thank the applicant and his mighty team. And good luck. Mr. Winnick, we can't hear you. You're muted, my friend. Nope. Still no.
I
There
just
you go.
thank you for your consideration. Have a nice evening.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you,
guys.
everybody. Okay.
Thank you.
And for the commission, we have one more item. And that is our minutes from last meeting. The minutes from June 11th. Does anybody have any revisions to provide Susan?
I have one. The minutes describe it as a meeting of Thursday, April 9th. And of course, this is the June meeting that you were talking about.
Sorry about that. I can make that change.
Yeah. Other than that, I have no comments.
Really, during COVID, what are days and weeks and months? Any other edits to the minutes? Okay, do I hear a motion?
This is
No one
David.
wants to
I
approve
move that we approve the minutes with the modifications.
Okay, anyone want to second it?
I'll second it.
Joe has seconded the motion. All in favor? Oh, well, then we can't do that, sorry. Marilyn, how do you vote yes? Susan?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and I do as well. Tom?
Yes, I support it.
Excellent. Okay, so the minutes of motion is passed with the edits to the minutes. Woo. Okay. All right.
Good job, guys.
Thank you. There's nothing further on our agenda. Appreciate you all as always. And Gideon, thanks. And Susan, Jeanette, thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yes. Thank you.
So long.